The grand court of the Zalari Empire shimmered with cold light. Silver pillars rose high into the air, glowing faintly like frozen moonlight. The air was heavy with tension and pride. Alien nobles, tall and graceful, filled the chamber. Their eyes glowed faint blue as they whispered among themselves, mocking the small figure standing in chains at the center of the floor. That small figure was a human. Captain Elias Ward stood still, shoulders straight, wrists bound in glowing cuffs. His uniform was torn, burned in places, and his face carried dust and bruises from capture. Yet his eyes were calm, steady as stone. He looked up at the throne without fear. At the far end of the court sat Princess Seraphine, ruler of the Zalari High Council. Her silver crown glimmered, and her long violet robes flowed like liquid silk. Her face was beautiful in a sharp, distant way. No emotion, no warmth, only authority. She watched the human as if studying an insect. "This is the creature who dared to enter sacred Zalari space," the court herald announced. His voice echoed through the hall. "He led a vessel of trespassers across our forbidden border." Murmurs filled the room. Some nobles laughed softly. Others hissed in disgust. Seraphine raised her hand and the room fell silent. Her voice was smooth and commanding. "Human," she said, "state your name and reason for violating the borders of my empire." Elias lifted his head. "Captain Elias Ward, Terran Expeditionary Corps," he said clearly. "We came to rescue a stranded freighter that sent a distress signal. We didn't mean to cross into your space." The princess's eyes narrowed. "A lie. Your kind always speaks of peace while carrying weapons." Elias didn't flinch. "We carried only supplies. We helped your miners trapped on Calros 9, you can confirm it." A few nobles laughed again. One of them whispered loudly, "Helping? How convenient. Humans pretend to be heroes in every story they tell." Seraphine's voice cut through the laughter. "Enough." She leaned forward, studying him. "You say you came to help my people, yet your ship entered forbidden territory, ignored every warning, and disobeyed our sentry commands. That is not help. That is intrusion." Elias took a slow breath. "Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking a few rules," he said. His voice was steady, almost gentle. "If I had turned away, your miners would have died." The court gasped at his tone. A prisoner speaking with such boldness, it was unthinkable. Guards tensed, ready to strike him down. But Seraphine raised her hand again. Her golden eyes locked on him. "You speak as if your morals outweigh our laws," she said softly. "You stand before an empire older than your world's sun and you judge us?" Elias looked up at her throne. "I don't judge you, princess," he replied. "But I do judge myself. And I can live with saving lives even if it means standing here." The room fell completely silent. Every sound seemed to vanish. For a moment even Seraphine said nothing. Her eyes, calm and cold, met his brown ones. And for a strange second she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger. Something quieter. Something human. Then she blinked it away. "Your words are clever," she said. "But your crime is clear." She turned to her guards. "The sentence is death." The court burst into approval. Nobles nodded in satisfaction. Some smiled cruelly. The alien herald raised his voice again, shouting, "Execution at dawn as commanded by Princess Seraphine." Two guards stepped forward to drag Elias away, but before they could, the human did something that stunned them all. He smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile. It wasn't the smile of a man hiding fear. It was calm, almost kind. A faint, peaceful curve of lips that didn't belong in a death sentence. Seraphine froze for just a second. No prisoner had ever smiled before her judgment. They screamed, begged, or cursed. But this one smiled. "Do you mock my decision?" she asked sharply. Elias shook his head. "No, princess," he said softly. "I was only thinking, if this is where it ends, at least I did what I believed was right." The nobles scoffed. "Foolish creature," one whispered. But Seraphine didn't speak. Her gaze stayed locked on him. For the first time in her life, she felt uncertain, something she never allowed herself to feel. Elias continued, his voice calm and even. "If death is the price for saving lives, then I'll accept it. You don't need to fear me, princess. Humans don't fear the end. We only fear not trying." Something inside her chest tightened. The words should have sounded meaningless, but they didn't. They carried weight, truth. And his eyes, those human eyes, showed no hate, no resentment. Only quiet strength. She looked away quickly. "Enough," she said, though her tone was softer now. "Take him back to his cell." The guards obeyed. As they took hold of Elias's arms, he turned once more to the throne. He bowed his head slightly and said, "Thank you for hearing me." Seraphine didn't answer. She only watched as he was led away through the silver doors, his calm steps echoing through the court. When the doors closed behind him, the room filled again with the noise of nobles. Some laughed, others spoke of honor and punishment, but the princess didn't hear them. Her eyes lingered on the space where he had stood. The image of his smile would not leave her mind. That night the palace was silent. Moonlight from Zalari's twin moons fell through the tall windows of Seraphine's chambers. She sat alone beside her crystal desk, unable to focus on the reports before her. She had sentenced hundreds of beings before. She had executed spies, rebels, and traitors without a second thought. But this time, something was different. Her mind returned again and again to that human's face. The calmness, the soft tone, the courage. Why had he smiled?
Why had he thanked her?
She stood and walked to the window, her reflection shining faintly in the glass. "He is a fool," she whispered. "Just a foolish creature from a backward world." But her voice didn't sound convincing even to herself. Her advisor, a tall Zalari noble named Kareth, entered quietly and bowed. "Your Highness," he said, "the execution preparations are complete. Do you wish to witness it tomorrow?" Seraphine turned her gaze to him. "No," she said quickly, then hesitated. "Yes, I will attend." Kareth nodded. "The people will be pleased. They see this as a reminder of Zalari power." "Power," Seraphine repeated softly. "Yes, of course." After he left, she sat again, her hands resting on the armrests of her chair. She thought about the word power. It was what she had always been taught to value. To lead, one must show no mercy. To rule, one must never doubt. Yet that human, without crown, without army, without anything, had stood before her unbroken. And somehow that frightened her more than any army ever had. She rose again and began to pace. "Why do I even care?" she whispered. "He's nothing. He's no threat." Still, the thought of him sitting in a dark cell below the palace filled her with strange unease. It wasn't guilt. It was curiosity. Deep, burning curiosity. For the first time in her life, Princess Seraphine felt unsure about her own judgment. And somewhere below her palace, in the darkness of his cell, Captain Elias Ward sat quietly. He looked through the small light hole in the ceiling, watching the faint stars above. He wasn't afraid. He thought of the lives he'd saved, and a small smile returned to his lips. The night fell over the Zalari palace like a silver curtain. Twin moons reflected across the high crystal walls, casting strange shadows on the polished floors. In her private chambers, Princess Seraphine could not sleep. Her violet robes lay in perfect folds on the bed, untouched, while she paced the room, hands clasped behind her back. Her mind was full of the human's face, Captain Elias Ward. She had sentenced him to death, yet the image of his calm, steady eyes and that impossible smile refused to leave her thoughts. She had seen countless prisoners beg, scream, or curse before their deaths, but this human had done none of those things. He had only smiled. Why? She wondered. Why would he smile in the face of death? The question gnawed at her. She paused by the window, gazing at the distant moons. They were pale and silent, but they felt more truthful than any counselor, more honest than the words of her advisors. She turned her head and muttered softly, "He is a fool, a weak, fragile fool." Yet she knew it wasn't true. Seraphine ordered her attendants to bring data on Earth. Screens flickered to life, filling her chamber with light. Humans, the document said, were from a planet of fire and storms, surviving natural disasters, war, and hunger. Their history was full of violence, yet also full of courage. They built cities, sailed seas, and learned to heal each other. Survivors, she whispered. They survive because they endure, not because they dominate. A quiet knock at the door made her start. A servant entered, holding a tray of scented oils and teas. Seraphine waved them away. She didn't notice the rich aroma of alien herbs. Her mind was already back on the human. She remembered how he had spoken so calmly, even under chains, how he had faced the court without bowing, without pleading, how his eyes had met hers not in fear but with respect, and that smile. The memory made her chest tighten. Her hands clenched into fists for a moment before she let them drop. She had always believed strength was shown through command. Fear commanded respect. Power commanded loyalty. Yet this human, weak and fragile in every way, had commanded something far more difficult. Attention, awe even. Hesitation. She rose from her seat and moved to a hidden observation panel. The surveillance system allowed her to watch the prisoner's cell without him knowing. The screen flickered, showing Elias sitting cross-legged on the cold floor, humming softly to himself. He held a small injured alien soldier in his arms, an enemy by Zalari standards, and carefully cleaned a wound. Seraphine's breath caught. He wasn't just brave, he was compassionate. Kareth, her trusted advisor, entered quietly behind her. "Highness," he said, "you shouldn't waste your thoughts on a prisoner. The execution is tomorrow. It will remind your people why the Zalari rule must not be questioned." Seraphine didn't turn to him. "Do you see him, Kareth?" she asked quietly. "This human. He cares for others, even enemies, and yet he does not fear death. How is that possible?" Kareth frowned. "It is a human trait, Highness. They are resilient but fragile. Fear and courage often mix in ways we cannot understand. It is part of their nature." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Resilient, yes, but more than that. He is different. He does not act like a weak creature. He does not bow. He does not scream. He does not hate. He smiles at death itself." Kareth paused, unsure what to say. He had never seen the princess so unsettled. "I need to see him," she said finally. "I need to speak with him." Kareth hesitated. "Your Highness, you cannot—" "I will go," she interrupted. "Tonight." That night, the corridors of the palace were silent. Seraphine moved alone, her steps quiet on the crystal floors. She descended the hidden stairwell to the prison level, bypassing guards who would never expect the princess herself to come. The air grew colder as she approached the cell where Elias waited. Inside the dim light, he looked up from a small pile of rations. His expression remained calm, even curious. "Princess Seraphine," he said, bowing his head slightly. "To what do I owe the honor?" Seraphine stepped closer, her heart beating faster than she had ever experienced. "I wanted to understand," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "Why did you smile in the court today?" Elias tilted his head. "Because fear is a choice," he said simply, "and I don't choose it." The words hit her harder than any insult or threat could. "You do not fear death?" she asked, still standing a few steps away from him. "I fear many things," he admitted, his voice quiet and steady. "I fear letting others die. I fear failing the people who depend on me. But death is only the end of a journey. It is not a failure." She frowned, feeling the weight of his words. Her whole life had been taught that fear is necessary. Fear is control. Fear is power. Yet this human had no fear, and still he was powerful, not by control but by calm, by choice, by courage. "Your people, your soldiers," she said slowly. "You risk your life for them, even strangers. Even enemies," he nodded. "Every life has value. Even if it is a life I do not know, I will try to protect it. That is the choice I make." Seraphine's lips parted. She had never heard a ruler speak of such ideas. She had never seen such morality in action. For a long moment they stood in silence. The hum of the prison lights was the only sound. Finally, Seraphine spoke, almost whispering, "You are different. From what I expected. From all humans." Elias smiled faintly. "Most humans are like this, Princess. You just have to see them for who they are, not what you expect them to be." The words made her heart skip. She turned away, unsure what to do with the emotions rising inside her. Respect, curiosity, fascination, perhaps even admiration. She could not tell the difference. "I should leave," she said, her voice firmer now, though her hands trembled slightly. Elias tilted his head. "You do not have to hide behind your title," he said gently. "You can speak freely. I will not mock you," the princess blinked. She had always believed that titles, crowns, and fear were the only shields against disrespect. Yet here, standing before a human who could be her enemy, she felt none of the usual need to command. "Do you not fear me?" she asked almost reluctantly. "Fear has nothing to do with truth," he said. "And I try to live by truth." She could feel her chest tighten. She had never heard words so simple yet so strong. They resonated deep inside her, forcing her to question everything she had learned. A soft silence fell over the cell. She watched him carefully, noticing the calm in his movements, the gentle way he had treated the injured alien soldier earlier. Finally, she whispered almost to herself, Why do I care so much about a human? Elias smiled faintly. Perhaps because you see something you did not know existed. Courage, kindness, and strength. Sometimes the smallest beings can show the greatest power. Seraphine's knees felt weak. She had to sit down. The words, the calm, the courage, it all overwhelmed her. Yet she forced herself to rise. I will go, she said again, more firmly this time. But I will return. I must understand more. Elias inclined his head. I will be here, princess. Not as a prisoner, but as someone who hopes you will see truth for yourself. As she left the cell, the cold corridors of the palace felt different. Shadows were no longer frightening. The air felt charged with something unfamiliar. Curiosity, maybe hope. She realized that the human had planted something inside her heart that could not be removed by fear or authority. Back in her chambers, she sat by the window again, watching the twin moons. She could not sleep. She did not want to sleep. Her mind kept returning to the calm smile of the human prisoner. The way he faced death without fear. The way he saw life as more than power, more than command. For the first time, Princess Seraphine questioned the world she had known. Not her laws, not her empire, but her understanding of strength, courage, and life, and somewhere below, in the cold darkness of his cell, Captain Elias Ward rested quietly, unaware of the storm he had begun in the heart of an alien princess. His calm smile lingered in her mind like a quiet flame. The next morning, the palace was alive with noise. Servants moved quickly along the corridors, preparing for the human's execution. Noble Zalari courtiers whispered among themselves, discussing the day's events. Many were excited to see the human die, eager for a display of the empire's unshakable power. But Princess Seraphine, now awake with unrest in her heart, could not bring herself to attend the preparations. Her mind kept returning to his face, his calmness, and that impossible smile. She had tried to dismiss it, tried to convince herself it was nothing more than arrogance. But the truth burned inside her. The human had unsettled her. His courage, his compassion, his calm in the face of death, it challenged everything she believed. By mid-morning, she had made a decision. Alone, without attendants or guards, she moved again to the prison level. Her violet robes flowed silently over the polished floor. The palace felt empty and cold, but the silence offered her courage. She needed to see him, not as a prisoner, but as a man. She arrived at his cell and activated the door with her royal pass. The heavy metallic door opened with a soft hiss. Captain Elias Ward was seated on the floor, folding a small blanket neatly. He looked up and blinked in surprise when he saw her standing there. Princess Seraphine, he said, bowing his head slightly. This is unexpected. Are you here for court matters? Seraphine shook her head. No, she replied, stepping inside. I wanted to speak with you. Alone. Elias raised his eyebrows, curiosity flashing in his calm brown eyes. Alone? Yes, she said softly. I have questions that the court cannot answer. I need your answers. Elias gestured to a small mat. Then sit, he said gently. I will answer what I can. Seraphine hesitated for a moment, then lowered herself onto the edge of the mat. It was awkward at first. Her royal presence felt heavy in the small, cold room. But she forced herself to focus. Why? She began carefully. Did you smile yesterday in the court? When I ordered your death, when everyone expected you to beg or cry, why did you smile? Elias considered the question, his gaze calm and steady. Because fear is a choice, he said simply. I chose not to fear. Not because I am strong, not because I am brave, but because fear does not serve life. It only limits it, Seraphine frowned. You do not fear death? I fear many things, he admitted. I fear failing my mission. I fear letting others die. I fear dishonoring those who trust me. But death itself, it is the end of one journey, not the measure of a person. Seraphine remained silent, struggling with the unfamiliar ideas. In her life, fear was a tool, a way to control others. Fear was authority. Fear was strength. Yet this human spoke as though fear was nothing. Yet he was full of life, full of purpose. You are different from all humans I have read about, she said slowly. Your kind is said to be weak, fragile, unpredictable. And yet you are calm, unshakable, even in chains. Elias smiled faintly. Humans are often judged by what they appear to be. But appearances are not truth. Strength comes in many forms, princess. Not all of it comes from weapons or power. Seraphine's lips parted slightly. She had never heard a ruler speak like this. Not a single Zalari subject had ever spoken to her so directly. Without fear, without flattery. He looked at her not as a princess, but as a person. "You speak as if morality is stronger than law," she said quietly. "Do you truly believe a man can survive by kindness?" "I do not know if it guarantees survival," Elias replied, "but I know it guarantees honor. And sometimes honor changes the world in ways power cannot." Her chest tightened. This is impossible, she thought. A weak human facing death. Teaching me lessons? She wanted to rise, to leave, to remind herself of her power, but she could not. She felt rooted, drawn to his calm words, drawn to the strength she could not name. "Your people, your soldiers," she said, "you risk your life for them, even for those who are not your allies." Elias nodded. "Every life has value. Even if I do not know the person, even if they are not human, I will try to protect them. That is the choice I make." The princess exhaled slowly. "You make choices. In a way I cannot understand. We rule with command, with law, with fear. You do not obey fear. You live by choice. And yet you are still strong." He smiled faintly. "Strength is not always shown by power. Sometimes it is shown by how we endure. Sometimes it is shown by how we treat others, even in hardship." Seraphine's knees felt weak. She had never spoken to anyone who could challenge her so completely. Not with force, not with weapons, not with title. Yet this human had done it with calm words and quiet courage. "Why? Do you not hate me?" she asked suddenly. "I sentenced you to death. I ruled over the court while they laughed at you." "Why do you not hate me?" Elias looked down, then back at her. "Hate is a burden," he said softly. "It takes away your clarity, your courage, your purpose. I do not hate you because I cannot afford to. I must face the truth. And the truth is, your command does not define me. My choices define me." Seraphine's heart raced. She wanted to speak, to challenge him, to assert her authority, but her voice caught in her throat. She felt an emotion she could not name. Respect, awe, something deeper, quieter, and more unsettling. You are impossible," she whispered. "Perhaps," Elias said, a faint smile on his lips. "Or perhaps impossible is just the way courage looks to someone who fears too much." The word struck her. Fear. She had always used fear as a shield, as a weapon. And yet, looking at him, she saw that fear was nothing compared to calm strength, compared to living honestly and fully, even when danger is near. For a long moment they sat in silence. The hum of the prison lights was the only sound. Seraphine's mind raced with thoughts she had never allowed herself to have. Doubt, wonder, curiosity. Finally she spoke again, more quietly, almost a whisper. "Do you not fear that I will kill you tomorrow?" "I do not pretend to be without fear," Elias said. "But I have accepted what may come. If I die, I will die having acted according to my principles. That is enough." Seraphine felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never thought that words could carry such power. Not swords, not armies, not royal decrees, only simple quiet truth. I do not understand you," she admitted. "And yet, I feel that I must. I cannot stop thinking of you." Elias inclined his head slightly. "Then perhaps the first step is to listen, princess. To see beyond what you were taught to believe." Her hand trembled slightly as she placed it on the mat. She had never bowed before a subject, never even in private. Yet something in him made her question everything. Her authority, her pride, her understanding of life itself. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," she whispered. I'm afraid of what you make me feel." Elias smiled faintly. "That is the beginning of understanding. Fear is natural, princess, but it can be turned into clarity. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the choice to act despite it." She looked at him, seeing not a prisoner but a teacher. Not a weak human, but a man who carried something far greater than any title, far stronger than any empire. "I must go," she said finally, rising to her feet. "But I will return. I need to know more." Elias inclined his head. "I will be here, princess, not as a prisoner, but as someone who hopes you will see the truth for yourself." She left the cell quietly, the echo of her footsteps lost in the halls, but her mind did not leave him. The calm of his presence, the strength in his simplicity, the courage in his smile, they followed her everywhere. Back in her chambers, she sat by the window and looked at the twin moons. She could not sleep. She could not eat. She could only think of the human who faced death with a smile. She realized that he had awakened something inside her she had never felt before. Not fear, not duty, not power, but curiosity, respect, and perhaps even admiration. And somewhere in the darkness below, Captain Elias Ward rested quietly, unaware of the storm he had begun in the heart of an alien princess. His calm, unwavering smile lingered in her mind like a quiet flame, one that refused to be extinguished. The morning sun filtered through the crystal windows of the Zalari High Court, reflecting across the polished floors in thousands of tiny lights. The chamber was alive with nobles, courtiers, and officials. Many of them wore expressions of expectation, excitement, and cruelty. Today would be the day they had waited for, the execution of the human who had dared to defy the Empire. Princess Seraphine sat on her throne at the far end of the hall. She had spent the night restless, unable to sleep. The image of Captain Elias Ward, calm in his chains, smiled in her mind. She had thought she could suppress the thought, but now it pressed on her like a quiet storm. She looked down at the council gathered before her. Some whispered about honor and power. Others spoke openly about the weakness of showing mercy. Yet Seraphine felt none of the pride she usually felt when commanding the court. Her chest was tight with something unfamiliar, curiosity, doubt, and even admiration. The human was brought forward, escorted by guards. He walked steadily despite the chains on his wrists, his head held high, his calm brown eyes scanning the hall. He looked directly at her for a moment and gave the faintest smile. It was the same smile he had given yesterday, the smile that had haunted her nights and filled her heart with a strange warmth. "Captain Elias Ward," the court herald announced loudly, "you stand accused of trespassing in the sacred territory of the Zalari Empire, defying our sentries and risking the lives of your crew. How do you plead?" Elias's voice echoed through the hall, clear and steady. "I plead not guilty to trespass, Princess Seraphine. My crew and I entered your space only to save lives. That is the truth." Laughter rippled through the nobles. One of them shouted, "Truth? You dare speak of truth before an empire that spans the stars?" Seraphine raised her hand, silencing the hall. Her golden eyes rested on the human. She could feel the energy in the room, the expectation that she would show no mercy. But inside her, the calm presence of Elias reminded her of another possibility. She took a deep breath. "Your actions," she said, her voice calm but firm, "were in violation of our laws. The penalty is death, yet..." I asked the court to pause. Gasps filled the room. The council looked at her in shock. Kareth, her trusted advisor, narrowed his eyes. "Highness," he said cautiously, "the sentence is clear. Do not waver." Seraphine did not respond. Her gaze returned to Elias. "You spoke with courage in court," she continued. "And in your calmness I see something I have never seen before. Something stronger than fear. Something human," the court whispered in disbelief. Some muttered that the princess had lost her mind. Others debated whether mercy was weakness. But Seraphine held her ground. She took another step forward, her voice ringing across the chamber. "I have watched you, human. I have seen you tend to others, even enemies, without hatred. I have listened to your words. And now I ask myself, what is stronger, fear or courage? Control or choice?" Elias's calm gaze never wavered. He nodded slightly. "The choice to act rightly is always stronger than fear or force, Princess." The nobles stared in disbelief. Some were furious. One shouted, "You cannot question the Empire's laws. You cannot spare this human. You will bring shame to the throne." Seraphine's eyes flared with quiet intensity. "I question nothing but injustice," she said. "If a life is saved by bravery, by courage, by honor, who am I to destroy it?" The human looked at her with deep respect. "Your Highness," he said softly, "you see truth. That is the greatest power of all." Silence fell over the court. Even the guards hesitated, unsure of how to act. Some of the nobles looked at each other nervously. For the first time, they questioned their own beliefs about strength and authority. Seraphine's voice grew stronger. "By my decree," she announced, "Captain Elias Ward shall live. He is free from punishment by my order alone." The chamber erupted. Some nobles shouted in outrage. Others whispered in awe. Kareth's face was pale with shock. "Highness," he said sharply, "you cannot defy the council. The Empire will see this as weakness." Seraphine met his gaze unwavering. "Strength is not in ruling through fear," she said. "Strength is in choosing justice even when it is difficult. Today I choose justice. The guards who had come to take Elias to the execution stepped back. The murmurs in the court grew louder. Elias's eyes met Seraphine's again, and he smiled, the same calm smile that had unsettled her so deeply. "You have chosen courage," he said quietly. "And in doing so, you have shown the world what true power means." Seraphine felt her chest tighten. It was not just relief nor pride. It was something more profound, a recognition that the human had awakened something inside her, something she had never known. One of the nobles finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Your Highness, what does this mean for the Empire?" Seraphine looked across the chamber. "It means that the Empire must remember that mercy is not weakness, that life, courage, and honor matter more than fear, that true strength is in knowing when to act and when to show restraint." The court fell silent again. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the clarity in her voice, the power in her choice. Elias stepped forward slightly, still in chains. "Your courage today will be remembered, Princess," he said softly. "Not as weakness, but as wisdom. Not as fear, but as power." Seraphine's heart warmed. She had expected the court to see only rebellion, weakness, or failure. Instead, she saw respect, curiosity, and perhaps even the beginnings of understanding among her people. She stood taller, feeling a strange sense of freedom herself. The weight of the crown was still heavy, but for the first time it felt lighter. She had acted not because law demanded it, but because her heart and mind told her it was right. "Take him to a safe place," she commanded the guards. "He is no longer a prisoner." The guards obeyed, still looking uncertain. The nobles whispered and murmured, some in shock, some in quiet admiration. The hall felt different now, charged with new possibilities. Elias bowed slightly to Seraphine. "Thank you, Princess. Your courage has changed more than just my life. It has changed the hearts of all who witnessed it." Seraphine nodded quietly. She could not yet name the feeling swelling in her chest. Pride, admiration? Something more personal? Perhaps all of them. As Elias was escorted away, she watched him walk steadily, chains no longer binding him in spirit. She felt the quiet truth settle in her mind. Courage and compassion are stronger than fear and control. And humans, in their strange, unpredictable ways, sometimes understood this better than any empire built on tradition and command. After the court emptied, Seraphine returned to her chambers. She sat by the window, gazing at the twin moons. The memory of his smile, his calm voice, and the simple truth of his courage burned in her mind like a quiet flame. For the first time, she did not feel the need to control, to command, or to intimidate. She only wanted to understand more, to learn more, to see what this human, and perhaps her own heart, truly meant. And somewhere in the distant corridors of the palace, Elias Ward rested quietly, unaware that his courage and calm had reshaped the heart of a princess and challenged the beliefs of an entire empire. The sun had begun to set over the Zalari capital, casting long shadows across the palace spires. The twin moons glimmered faintly in the distance, reflecting their pale light on the crystal walls. In her private chambers, Princess Seraphine stood quietly, gazing at the horizon. Her mind was restless, alive with thoughts she could no longer ignore. Since the court, she had struggled to understand the depth of the human's impact on her. Captain Elias Ward had challenged everything she believed about strength, courage, and leadership. His calmness, his bravery, and that impossible smile haunted her like a quiet flame she could neither extinguish nor fully comprehend. For days, she had watched him from a distance through observation panels and reports. He had not wasted a single moment since being spared. He cared for injured aliens, comforted the weak, and spoke to prisoners not with condescension but with quiet respect. Every act he performed was simple, yet carried weight far beyond her understanding. Finally, she could no longer stay in the safety of distance. She needed to see him again, to speak with him, to understand the truth that he carried with him so effortlessly. Silently, she moved through the corridors of the palace, her violet robes brushing against the crystal floors. The guards, loyal but unaware, let her pass. Seraphine descended to the prison level, her heart beating faster than she expected. When she reached his cell, Elias was seated cross-legged on the floor, tending to a small plant he had somehow managed to grow in the corner. It was green and fragile against the cold gray of the stone floor, but it thrived under his care. He looked up when she entered, Princess Seraphine, he said calmly. I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon. Seraphine stepped closer, her voice soft. I could not stay away. I need to understand something, Elias. I need to understand you. He gestured to a mat near him. Then sit, he said. I will answer what I can. For a moment she hesitated. She had never sat on the same level as anyone in her life, let alone a prisoner. But something in his calm presence made the act feel natural. She lowered herself slowly, careful not to seem weak yet unable to stop her heart from racing. You have changed the way I see everything, she began, her voice quiet. The court, my people, even myself, how can one human have such power without armies, without weapons, without even a crown? Elias smiled faintly, the same calm smile that had first unsettled her. Strength is not always measured by what one holds, he said. True strength comes from how one acts, how one cares, and how one faces what is inevitable. Seraphine studied him, her golden eyes searching his face for hidden motives, for tricks, for deceit. She found none. Only honesty, courage, and something that felt pure. You do not fear me, she said finally. Even now, after I sentenced you to death, after the court wished for your end. How can you stand so calmly before me? Fear does not serve anyone, Elias said softly. I have accepted what may come, but I do not allow it to rule my thoughts or my actions. I focus on what I can do, not on what I cannot change. Her chest tightened. She had always believed that fear was necessary, that control was power. Yet here was a human, standing unbroken, showing her a strength she could not have imagined. You have awakened something inside me, she whispered. I do not understand it. Respect, admiration? Something else? He tilted his head, studying her calmly. Perhaps it is the recognition of truth, he said. You see me not as a prisoner, not as an enemy, but as a person. And that recognition changes everything. It allows courage and compassion to exist even in the midst of fear. For the first time in her life, Seraphine felt her knees weaken. The weight of her crown, the responsibility of the empire, the expectations of the court, they all seemed to fade in the presence of his calm, unwavering truth. She sank to her knees, unable to stand, unable to hide the emotions that had built within her for days. Elias's eyes widened slightly, but he did not move toward her. He only watched with quiet understanding. Princess, he said softly, you do not need to hide what you feel. There's no shame in acknowledging the truth even to oneself. Her hands trembled as she rested them on the cold floor. I thought power was everything, she whispered. I thought fear and command were the keys to respect and control, but you have shown me that courage, compassion, and honesty are stronger than all of that. Elias nodded. True power is not taken. It is earned. It comes from choice, from action, and from integrity. That is why humans can survive what seems impossible, and why your people, when guided rightly, can be even stronger than any empire imagined. Seraphine lifted her gaze to meet his. Her golden eyes shone with tears she had never expected to shed. I was wrong, she admitted. About so many things. About humans, about courage, about life, and about myself. Elias gave a faint, encouraging smile. Acknowledging truth is never weakness, Princess. It is the beginning of true strength. For a long moment they sat in silence, the quiet of the cell wrapping around them. Seraphine's heart, once heavy with duty and fear, now felt lighter, freer. The calm presence of the human before her had broken the walls she had built around herself for her entire life. Finally, she whispered, I should not have judged you by your appearance or your kind. You have taught me more in days than I have learned in years on the throne. Elias's smile widened slightly. That is the human way, Princess. We do not always have great armies or shiny crowns, but we have courage, and that courage can change the hearts of those who will listen. Seraphine bowed her head, overwhelmed by the simplicity and truth of his words. She had been a ruler all her life, yet here was a man teaching her lessons of life, courage, and honor. And for the first time she felt a strange humility, an acknowledgement that she could learn, that she could grow, and that she could change. You have changed me, she whispered, and perhaps in time you will change my people too. I am grateful. Elias inclined his head slightly. Then my purpose here has been fulfilled, Princess. Not by force, but by courage, by calm, by living rightly, even in chains. The princess looked at him, truly looked at him, and in that moment, she felt the depth of the human spirit she had never known. She understood that strength was not measured by armies, power or fear, but by the courage to face the unknown, the compassion to care for others, and the calm honesty to act rightly even when all seemed lost. Slowly she rose from her knees. Though she had fallen, she no longer felt shame. Instead, she felt enlightened, strengthened in ways no throne or crown had ever given her. She knew that from this day forward, her rule, her empire, and even her understanding of life would be different, because of him. Elias stood as well, extending a hand. "Princess Seraphine," he said gently, "you do not need to fear growth, nor change, nor truth. They are the gifts of courage and understanding, and you have embraced them." Seraphine hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The warmth of the touch, simple yet grounding, anchored the emotions that had been building inside her. For the first time, she felt truly connected, not as a ruler to a subject, but as one person to another. "You have saved more than lives," she said softly. "You have saved me, from ignorance, from fear, from pride. I am in your debt, Elias Ward," he smiled calmly, "and I have only done what I always try to do, Princess. To act rightly, even when it is difficult, even when it is dangerous. That is all anyone can do." For a long moment the room was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the palace and the distant glow of the twin moons outside. Princess Seraphine finally understood that true power was not command, nor fear nor title, but the courage to act rightly, to care for others, and to remain calm in the face of life's greatest challenges. She fell to her knees once more, not in weakness, but in awe and respect. She had witnessed the human spirit in its purest form. She had seen courage, honesty, and compassion that could inspire not just her, but her entire empire. And somewhere below, in the quiet of the palace, Captain Elias Ward's calm smile remained unchanged, as steady as it had always been. But now it had become a beacon, not just to her, but to an entire world, learning that humans, in their strange, unpredictable way, could teach even an alien princess the true meaning of strength, courage, and life.